Hello. I always dreamt about being a scientist, but I ended up more like a business person and an entrepreneur. But this is really great. Maybe I will keep this when I return to Copenhagen. I'm Anna. I'm from the Footprint Fund, a Copenhagen-based impact Article 9 fund with a broad focus within climate and environmental investments. We invest in pre-seed and seed stage in Northern Europe. And I'm one of the 3 co-founders. A small specialty around us is that we also have a sustainability strategic advisory business. We all work in both areas, and that actually allows us to build a lot of deep knowledge within biosolutions, built environment, climate tech, and some of the other areas that we invest in.
Thanks, Anna.
Over to you, co-science.
I am Destana, and I'm a principal at Regeneration.bc, also based in Copenhagen, just down the street actually, we're neighbors. And at Regeneration, we focus on what we call early stage consumer climate tech. We define that as seed and Series A investments at the intersection of consumer industry value chains, food, fashion, you get the idea, and circularity. So we're focused on circular-driven solutions to planetary boundary problems. And I suppose sometimes I'm a climate scientist on the side. Over to you, Michelle.
Hi, everyone. I'm Michelle Capoid. I'm a co-founding partner of Blume Equity. Blume Equity is a specialist climate tech growth investor born out of Europe. We're based in London and Amsterdam, and we invest into European-based scale-ups focused on climate, broadly speaking. That can mean anything around environmental sustainability and planetary boundaries that we heard about earlier. I think we should maybe, given the topic of what we're talking about here and the Atlantic corridor, mention a little bit around our connection to the US as well. And while Blume Equity is a European-based climate tech growth fund, we are looking for companies that have global ambitions, and sometimes that means crossing the pond to the US. And we have Americans on the team. I've lived in the US and think that there are many complementary aspects between Europe and the US, and we're stronger together. We also have portfolio companies that have a presence in the US. Some of them have moved their headquarters to the US. Others have chosen to stay in Europe. So I think this is, what we're going to talk more about. But we'd be curious, Destana, what's your perspective on, connection between US and Europe? Because Regeneration originally has a different starting point.
Yeah, Regeneration's origin story, if you will, began in LA. I think in 2022 or 23, we had about 6 people, full-time management team in the US, and 0 people in Europe. But Fund 1 did make several investments on the continent and the nearby island, one of whom you'll actually hear from later today. So in setting up Fund 2, we wanted to be a bit more intentional about having somebody on the ground. Somebody quickly became a few people, and now we are 2 people in the US and 5 people in Europe. I am lucky enough to be one of them. I found the beautiful, beautiful city of Copenhagen just 2 years ago, joining an advisor, so we were able to set up, a proper regional hub and understand cultural differences, understand how to target and find the right communities and accelerators and these labs. And I've found that over the past couple years, I have more and more friends, particularly in the past 6 to 12 months, asking me, what opportunities are there in Europe? What's going on in Denmark? I have a background in X. I'm interested in Y. Do you know anybody hiring? People from Tier 1 funds in the US looking to move over either to an earlier growth stage company. And I also know a lot of funds that are starting to look to the US and say, we can start to bring on talent that we haven't previously had access to. That's my experience. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think when I was asked to be part of this panel, I was thinking, okay, but we have 0 US exposure, actually. We have a Northern European investment mandate. We are a very international team, but so far we don't have any Americans on board. But I think especially what you're talking about there, the opportunities. I see huge opportunities right now in a world where Sorry, Americans, but I'm not the biggest fan of the US currently, especially not when you look at sustainability and the whole wording around that. But there's never a situation or a crisis where you shouldn't then think about the opportunities. And I think right now, this might be the time where we should really, really start building new relationships, making new friends, and trying to bridge with a lot of American talent who are actually on the same side. They also want to push the green transition. They're dedicated, they're really smart, and I have to say what the Americans have that I think we lack a little bit in Europe sometimes is this commercial killer instinct. You go for kind of like the moon, you don't take no for an answer. And sometimes when I meet really, really, really great people within deep tech, for example, almost wearing this beautiful outfit that we are wearing, they need a new friend who will then take them to the moon and help they realizing all that. So I think when I'm going home, I will really try to work more structuredly around this. Then I think speaking about commercial opportunities, and if we are to make good investments, high multiples, which we need to prove we can do within the green investment area as well, and shoot for the moon, what about the commercial opportunities? Michelle, you have a foot and an understanding of both the US market, the promised land, and Europe. How do you see the opportunities here?
It's a great question, and obviously we are, as a European climate tech growth investor, very bullish on the European opportunity. We think that Europe has, at this point in time, a unique chance to really take a lead on climate. We need a lot of collaboration across capital allocators, investors, startups, government, etc., to really make this happen, because we live in a part of the world where we have a lot of disparate regulations, small countries, that makes it a fragmented market. But we do believe we have all the ingredients. We have the innovation, we have the science, we have amazing universities that are bringing out exceptional new scientific solutions to real-world problems. And we therefore are very opportunistically investing into those companies that we think have the ability to scale those solutions. But equally, we believe that it's not about Europe versus the US. I think in this current political environment, there is a careful strategy needed in terms of the historical, let's go to the promised land of the US, where it's easier to scale, it's easier to get risk capital, it's easier to IPO, because at the moment, climate is not the favorite word of Trump, let's be honest. And so you need to think that through carefully. And you also need very significant capital. And as a growth stage investor, what we want to see is that a company proves out their product or service in the home market, ideally, and then scale gradually. Don't go and try to own the world on day one. Have global ambition, but do it in a very thoughtful, sequenced manner. And in some instances, very sector-specific, you may need to go to the US, but you can do it in a more cost-efficient way, where in order to have, in this kind of deglobalizing world, a local presence, you need to feel local. So act global, but you need to be local as well. So in some instances, you can set up a subsidiary or a presence in the US, but you don't need to go all in terms of building out everything at once. So we are very much of the view that you need to as any strategy, think it through carefully, and look at the US as a long-term opportunity, and perhaps also manage the positioning a little bit differently given the current environment we're in. But I'd be curious what you think, Destana, because you probably have a slightly different view.
Really, really well said. I think I agree with a few of the points you've made, including that we see Europe as an incredible opportunity. So Regeneration set up its second fund as a parallel entity. We have a Delaware limited partnership as well as a parallel Belgian fund. That Belgian fund does sit under Article 9 regulation. We are a dark green impact fund, which means...
Can we do a high five on that?
Yes, let's do it.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that's because of what we see coming to Europe, right? But part of our history, part of our value add, part of where we see ourselves as additional is the fact that we are indeed dual. We are not intending to become purely a European fund, and we see the drawbacks in being purely an American fund. Rather, we want to kind of straddle that transatlantic corridor and have boots on the ground in both territories so we can help our European founders find opportunities in the States, and we can help our US founders find opportunities in Europe without ever asking people to re-domicile, right? That's not our focus, and we understand that there are some hesitations and concerns with smaller countries, like the Danish market, seeing some of their, top cases and outliers look to the US as a necessary next step to re-domicile. And I think that this is actually possible to accomplish without re-domiciling, to chase those commercial opportunities, to find capital in the US, as long as you have the right partner that has connectivity and is able to think global but act locally. That's what we're trying to do at Regeneration on the topic. Michelle, I had one last thing that I wanted to run by you. Actually, that was you, Anna.
But we look a little bit alike in the same outfits.
Exactly.
So,
It was the outfits that confused me.
Yeah.
So the planetary boundary opportunities remain. They're actually getting worse every year. When we start to think about what it would look like to create greater commercial opportunities in Europe, what we can do as private sector actors, not as public politicians and changing the regulations and trying to create synergies between the different national markets, but what we can do as private investors. What do you look for? What kind of signals do you look for? Is it green premium, or where do the commercial opportunities lie?
I would love to say that I believe in green premiums. I believe there should be green premiums. I have to say, in reality, I don't believe in it, not as it looks right now. We live in a capitalistic world and a setup where we have to prove, and I think that's stressing me out a lot, because we don't only have to prove to our investors and to our fantastic startups that we can make return on investment, but we also have a bigger case to prove to the whole financial market, private capital, that green investments are not a nice project. It's not for fun. It's not to just be nice and do the right thing. It can actually be a competitive investment compared to traditional non-green investments. And when we look at cases, we cannot look at the business case and lean back and rely on, there will be a green premium, or, on future regulation that will help us. Of course, we look at regulatory tailwind. Of course, I actually think at some point you will have the demand supply from planetary boundaries where, the resources will start to just be more expensive because they are more scarce. But we have seen with the omnibus right now, for example, how quickly regulation can change. So we need business cases that are competitive on unit economics, and that the impact contribution goes hand in hand with actually the business case. And that's the brutal truth. Having said that, I think it's also a lot about talking into the world that we are actually part of. So right now, one of the big opportunities that we see in Europe is the whole new security economics agenda. So all of a sudden, we have cases that we have been looking at from like a green transition point of view with a good business case. That could be within raw materials, circularity, energy, whatever. But all of a sudden, this is becoming a very, very hot topic from a defense. Defense is not only weapon, but from a security defense point of view for Europe, to kind of like be able to sustain ourselves, this less international world order that we are looking into right now. So I think it's also spotting, the opportunities that then the money and the politicians and the market understand and translate that into that language, instead of saying, but this is good for planet Earth. I buy that, you buy that, many of you buy that, but the money doesn't buy that.
Yeah.
So we haven't been very good historically keeping the big unicorns of Denmark in Denmark. They've been going to the US. Yeah. How do you see this, Michelle?
I mean, I completely agree. I think the narrative has changed in some ways in that climate is not the word of the day. It's turning more to resilience, and that ties in with defense, etc. But I think the fundamental problem remains the same, and the need remains the same, and we think that the opportunity is there. You may just need to package the story slightly differently, and I couldn't emphasize enough, as a growth stage investor, really focus on the unit economics from day one, because it's much, much harder to fix it later on. So try to build a business where you can make the economic case, in addition to the climate case, stack up for investors, because that is going to be your fastest ticket to scaling. Setting aside FOACs, or first-of-a-kind solutions we heard from ClimateWorks and BrineWorks, here I do think private capital alone simply cannot do it. We do need Europe to put its act together and provide more government funding to help these companies scale to a volume where the unit economics make sense. So I think this is the one thing that I would say for those in the room who work in government and also in banks. We need your support to scale some of the new infrastructure that's needed for the world to thrive within the planetary boundaries. Destana, what's your remark?
Well, I'm returning to the point of talent. I think one of the opportunities that's most apparent to me is how many friends and people close to me back home are itching to see something different, to be somewhere else, and to be in an environment and surrounded by people that understand the problems they're trying to solve, that are passionate about the solutions they're building inherently. And I got really tired of that living in the US after several years with Regeneration in Southern California and the Northeast, places that are a bit more progressive and are a bit more aligned, but still over and over having to re-explain fundamental planetary constraints was a drag. And so I've had such a good time and really enjoyed being in Denmark. I see tremendous opportunity for Regeneration in the Nordic markets more broadly. So, you know, that's part of the reason that I'm here in Iceland this week. I think that where compared to US markets, valuations also present a really exciting opportunity for venture funds. I think you'll see more and more funds start coming into Europe. In my view, I think as founders, you should be looking for the specialist funds. There are additional values that generalist funds can bring, particularly if the head fund managers of those generalist funds are specialized in their background. But as a category, I'd be looking for those specialist funds that align with the work you're doing. You will see more and more start entering into your backyard here. So Iceland, I think, you know, you're situated so perfectly right in this transatlantic corridor. You know, for better or worse, this is going to be a conversation that I think you can reckon with and turn it into something really special for this really, really special place. So thanks for having me here. I'm sure my panelists agree that this has been a fun time. But I need a bio break, so...
Maybe there's like one of these
I don't
ones?
think I can use that.
No, okay.
But maybe before you run, or you
Okay.
run on your bio break, just to say, I can only echo what Destana...
Do you want to run and we
just
will close?
I'll do my dance.
Okay.
just said. So excited about what you're building here in Iceland. I think there's so many truly exceptional startups, and we're tracking many of you and are very excited to support Icelandic businesses, whether you go west or you go east. Thank you so much for your time.
And let's not give up on the US. There are a lot of people out there, so we just have to make friends with the right ones, including you, my new friend.
Thank you.